Hi, Glenys.
Hey, Aaron. What do you want to talk about today?
How much I hate diets.
Yeah, diets suck.
So what do you do instead of a diet?
Intuitive eating. Health at every size.
So how many times have you had to explain intuitive eating and health at every size to someone?
Like 5,000 times. But that was just to my doctor.
Okay, so how many times have you explained it to someone and then they said, but diets are the only thing I know?
That's like every time. Can we pursue health without thinking about weight?
Yes, we can pursue health without thinking about weight.
That's pretty revolutionary, what you just said. But what if you just don't like yourself at the size that you're at?
I think we need to understand why, instead of just saying I need to change.
So, what's the deal with body positivity?
Oh man, that's a long answer. I'm Aaron Flores.
And I'm Glenys Oyston. And we are Dietitians Unplugged. Hey there. Welcome back to our podcast. We are so happy to have you here. And I'm so happy to be talking to you again, Aaron.
Hey, Glenys. Always happy to be back on the line with you.
Mm-hmm. And we have a great episode today. We're talking to our friend and colleague, Lauren Anton, who's a registered dietitian. And we're going to talk about exercise stuff. Basically.
Yeah.
We cover a lot under this.
Totally. And I feel like Lauren is like a wealth of knowledge, and it was really awesome to get her on the show and share some of that knowledge. And I think folks who have questions around exercise and their relationship with exercise are really going to dig this interview for sure.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Lauren. You want to read her bio for us?
Gladly. Lauren is a certified eating disorder registered dietitian. She's iaedp approved supervisor and a certified personal trainer, helping people to break free from diet culture using a weight-inclusive, health at every size approach. She has hands-on experience working with eating disorders from residential through outpatient levels of care and currently works with clients out of her Los Angeles-based private practice. She also supervises fellow dietitians and runs a monthly supervision group. Lauren has spoken nationally on athletes and eating disorders, adolescents and eating disorders, and weight stigma, and has presented her own research examining the effects of intuitive eating-based nutrition education on adolescent female cross-country runners. Lauren is currently in the process of certification as a body trust provider. She's also been quoted in publications such as the Washington Post, BuzzFeed, and the Huffington Post.
Yep. She's our super knowledgeable eating disorder dietitian friend and also knows just a ton about exercise, exercise avoidance, exercise dependence. And we talked about all of that in this episode. So anything you want to, some housekeeping before we get going?
The only sort of housekeeping I can sort of think of, again, is just asking folks to continue to share our podcast with friends and family. We have a great group of loyal listeners, and we really thank you for taking the time each episode to spend time and listen to what we're saying. And we'd love for this message to spread out. So if there's an episode that you're really fond of, please share it with some friends and family. And hopefully we can get more people listening to this, because I think it's really needed, especially this day and age and how pervasive diet culture is showing up. So thanks to everyone who's supporting us.
And the other way to spread the news is to give us a rating in Apple Podcasts and to, even if you want to leave a little review, that really does help boost us up, I guess, in the labyrinthine search engine of the Apple Podcast. I have no idea how it works. All I know is that stuff helps. Spread the word, health at every size. We want people to have options.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's move on to our interview with Lauren Anton.
Lauren, our friend, it's so nice to have you here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here with you too. Yes.
You are part of the awesome Los Angeles HAES community, and I'm so happy to know you. And we both know you, so it's great.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Lauren was my boss for a little while.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember interviewing you, and like we've talked about this several times, but it was the best because I was just like sitting there, like I felt like, who is this person? He seems kind of cool. Is he gonna be health at every size? We were sizing each other up. That's what we were doing.
Yeah.
It was like a couple of roosters in the ring, just
It
ready
was.
but ready to embrace each other.
We were cool. And then
to not actually fight. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And we were like, wait a minute, you're cool. Oh my gosh.
And in the end, it was a beautiful relationship.
Absolutely.
So,
Indeed.
yeah. So, Lauren, you are known in our circle pretty much as the go-to dietitian around matters of exercise. You do lots of other stuff, but I want to say when exercise comes up, people are like, Lauren Anton. So tell us a little bit about how you came to health at every size and your personal evolution with exercise.
I'll begin at the beginning, but in the Reader's Digest way. When I was, I started running back in middle school. In like seventh and eighth grade. And I was always considered as a kid, like to not be very athletic, actually. I was picked last on the kickball team. I was made fun of on the kickball team because I couldn't play it. And then I just picked up running because there was no balls involved. There you go. I realized I was okay at running, which meant that I was just one of the very few people who could run a mile without collapsing at that point. So I started running, and it became, how it ties into, I'll get into how I came to know and love health at every size, which I use not only professionally, but in my personal life as well. But when I was on the running teams, both in high school and in college, I was one of the larger runners on the team, if not the largest. And just to be clear, I am not in a larger body. So they were very just the sort of stereotypical, runner, very slight, very slim builds. So I was more of a medium build, to be frank. So I got used to being called, various versions of fat. In fact, my nickname was Roby in high school, which was short for robust, because my dad he did this lovingly. He said, Lauren, you're fast for a robust runner. And it's like, you're kind of, yeah, thanks. So that sort of stuck, and my teammates lovingly called me Roby. I didn't like it, but I knew to laugh it off because that's what was expected. So I was called things like chubby, chunky, Rubenesque, all the things, curvy, because I was hanging out with people who were extraordinarily small. So that kind of lasted into college. And in college, I went to a D1, a Division I school. And I ran for a season there. And my parents actually made me quit because I was so very injured. I just threw myself into that physical activity, into the sport, not really caring about my body and not really respecting it in the least. And that's how that had been my attitude towards running. Just do it, throw your body into it hard as I can, and proved to everyone how good I was. In fact, in senior year in high school, I ended up being MVP. And I had been the slowest runner on the team for sure freshman year. I was not a natural when in cross country in high school. And I also ran track. I ended up specializing in the 3,000. So those are my sports. And I ended up becoming a personal trainer in my 20s and out of college. And I really, it was in my late 20s actually. And I really, really, really loved the identity of being like kind of a sporty spice, like just being, she's really athletic. She's really, just super strong. That's how I wanted to appear. I wanted to appear athletic. I wanted to appear like a stereotypical version of athletic and strong. that muscled, that sort of thing. So I stayed in personal training, just doing it at a gym much longer than I actually wanted, because I craved that identity. So when I went back and got my master's in nutritional science, I immediately kind of, fashioned that entire master's with eating disorders and sports nutrition. That was my entire focus. So everything I did pointed to that. And what ended up happening was I discovered Intuitive Eating, the book by Elise Resch, and Evelyn Tribole. And then I also, a little bit later, shortly after, discovered the book Health at Every Size. And even later than that, discovered the book Body Respect, which was much later. But the two books, Intuitive Eating and Health at Every Size, really clicked with me. Health at Every Size by Linda Bacon and Body Respect by Linda Bacon and Lucy Afflemore. And so reading those books kind of just allowed me to see an entire new relationship with my body, with physical activity, and with food. So that was really, really instrumental. And so now, as I'm sitting here in a boot and crutches with 2 torn ligaments that are repaired now in my foot. And this is the 5th orthopedic surgery I've had. The other 4 orthopedic surgeries were due to overexercise, and, just kind of all the old injuries, kind of coming to roost, if you will. So I tore my hamstring. I had a labral tear surgery in my hip. I had 2 shoulder surgeries. And those were all due to just a lot of running, a lot of weightlifting. And so I've gotten a chance to sit there and take a look at, my relationship with my body and physical activity through my injuries as well. Learning that this body is not meant to be thrown around. This body is meant to be respected. I need to start to listen to it. That's been sort of my evolution into Health at Every Size.
Those are 3 books that you mentioned that are like incredibly essential, I think, in helping people move into this space. So I'm really happy you name those specifically because they're the same books that were my entry points in many ways. So our listeners should definitely start cracking open those books because I think they're incredible resources, all of them.
Yes.
Yeah. And I always appreciate in LA, the trajectory is you all have read Intuitive Eating and then later you read Health at Every Size. And in the Bay Area, we all read Health at Every Size first, and then we come to Intuitive Eating later. So I appreciate that it's, it's just, Linda Bacon is up in the Bay Area, Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribole are down here in Southern California. So it must just be like that. That's just how it goes, right? Like
regional.
Yeah. But we all end up in the same place, which is great.
Yes.
Learning to respect our bodies.
Absolutely. And especially like you mentioned when there is injury involved. And I think that's an interesting perspective to add to it as well.
Right. Yeah. I've had tons of injury. I mean, the one I have now is because I fell off a ladder. But to be honest,
that's not a sport. That's not a sport.
Someone told me to make up a better lie. But I can also point to the vestiges of sort of like what was underlying is like I was rushing around my kitchen. I didn't make sure the ladder was all the way open and it just closed and, squeezed my foot as I fell. So I don't know how still to that day how that happened, but that happened. So, I can even now, years and years later, I can even now say, okay, I still need to pay attention to slowing down, paying attention, taking a breath, even in my own life and in my own work right now.
I think many of us want to believe that we're infallible physically. And the reality is even the most athletic of us are not infallible. When you look at pro athletes, top athletes, they all have injuries. So, those of us who aren't going to become pros, I think it really kind of behooves us to figure out what our limits are and to be able to sort of respect our bodies in that way and say like, you know what, this isn't something I can do.
Yes.
And I just need to be careful and respect that.
And they all retire and they all, lose some of their abilities as they get older. I mean, it's just, this is a part of aging and it's something I'm noticing in my body for sure as I get older, and it's definitely a challenge.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a practice in acceptance for me. Right before I was going to, right before I fell off the ladder this year, I was like, okay, this is the year I'm really going to bump up. I've been practicing yoga for 20, some odd years now, and I'm like, I'm really going to dive in, and I'm going to get certified this year. I'm going to get certified as a teacher. And that had to be put on the back burner potentially forever. I don't know. We'll see how my foot heals up. But that was a big, a grieving process. Each injury is a grieving process. When I woke up from my labral tear surgery in my hip, where they had to shave down the femur of the bone spurs that had torn up the labrum, which is the lining in there. I woke up from that and the doctor was like, so no more marathons, and my reaction, hey, I had just woken up from anesthesia, but I totally was inconsolably crying for, I don't know how many minutes. So it is a grieving process, especially for an athlete, to have to quit running on the college team that I was on was really hard. It was a big identity thing. I went in and cleared out my locker when I knew no one else would be there. And I just cried and cried and cried. It was really, I can't stress the grieving process. And I didn't have any help with it, but I would encourage, don't do it that way.
Get help.
Get help.
Get therapeutic help. Yeah.
Therapy help. Definitely do it. See a therapist. Part of what a sports psychologist does is help people transition out from, being an athlete to non-athlete life, or to, past competitive athlete life. And now we're moving our body in a different way. We may still be athletic, but, we're not doing that sport as intensely as we used to. So, yeah.
You've had to sort of give up a lot over time.
Glenys just laying it down. She's like, yeah, wow. Let me grieve with you, Lauren. Yes.
Or not.
I am. Yes. Yeah. You know what I have? Okay. So and it's coming up, especially with this injury right now. Watching people back when I was running my marathons, there was no Facebook. When I was on teams, there was no Facebook. There was none of that social media stuff. How people love to be post their runs and stuff like that. And, I'll see that every once in a while. The people that I'm friends with, typically don't, but some of them do. And, man, it's hard. And they don't mean anything by it. Especially the people that I follow on social media. But sometimes it's just personally, I'll get that twinge of envy, and I'll be like, gosh, they went on a blah, blah, blah run, or they did that in XYZ. And I'll want to, I'll miss it really bad. It's just really tough sometimes. So, as I go through this now, I'm going to need to be careful. I'm going to need to not do too much. I'm going to need to rest. I'm going to need to, this is a tough one, ask for help. I like to be really independent, and it's hard to ask for help, ask for rides. My husband's doing all the things for me right now, and it's really hard to not help out with my example, making dinner. So it's been a real, I don't know, lesson. Yeah, I'm not the person running marathons anymore. That's for sure.
This piece connects to just so many conversations we've had recently about sort of embracing the moments we're in. And for our clients, there's a lot of that also about how to embrace sort of the where they are right now. And so, I think there's two scenarios that I think I'd really love to hear your perspective on. And one is, for the folks that have had seen exercise or moving their body really only from this frame of losing weight. And then there's like so much resistance to it once they do heal their relationship with food and body, that like, how can I get back to this behavior without it triggering weight loss, mindset. And then, but on the other hand, where moving their body becomes obsessive, not as an athlete, but just as I got to do my workouts on a really regimented basis, and helping those folks transition into like a much more sustainable, kind way of moving their body. And they're two unique, two very sort of opposite things. But I'm wondering, like, do you see any commonalities in how you work with those clients in helping them change their relationship with moving their body?
So yes, a lot of people will get caught up in exercise or any sort of body movement. First of all, they'll define exercise as like a certain thing, like either the heart rate needs to be way up, or, I need to do this amount of sweat, or it needs to be this long, or it needs to be this type of activity. So there, you see the rigidity there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see that in not only people who are sort of exercise avoidant, but I also see that in obviously people who are exercise dependent. So especially people become exercise avoidant. So many reasons, but one reason is one you've mentioned, is when they when they kind of attach the notion of body movement to weight loss. Why would I move my body other than weight loss or weight management, or whatever they want to call it, right? Mm-hmm. Maintaining a certain weight and a certain physique. Sometimes it's not even a weight, it's a physique, it's a look. Mm-hmm. That was what I was caught in. I didn't give a crap about my weight at times. There were times when I did. But mine was all about looking a certain way. I wanted to look like an impenetrable warrior. That is just not going to happen without injury for me. So in terms of like how to approach, one thing I do is I will do what I like to call a kind of a body movement timeline. And what I do is I'll take from birth, and I use the word movement, like a movement timeline, not an exercise timeline. So there might be formal exercises in sport in there, fine. But body movement, all the movement timeline from birth till now, and allow the person to go through like when they were a baby. And then they'll look at me and be like, I don't remember, I was a baby. And I'm like, either make it up or go based on some stories, like think about a baby. Why, so what kind of movement does a baby do? And then I want to know, like, what was the intention behind the movements throughout the life? So I might like have them split it up, and it varies. But like maybe, for example, like 0 to like, 2 or 3, 3 to 5. And then they might have like, each person's going to be different because, maybe they were involved in gymnastics and that really kind of colored their life from like 3 to like, 13 years old, for example. So bracketing it out, spacing it out, breaking it up in terms of like, age ranges that work for that person. So, for me, it would have been like, 0 to 3, then like 3 to like 5, and then entering into, kindergarten and grade school, up through 5th grade, and then 5th to 8th, and then high school and college, and then, 20s, and then I would take it decades then. And for the record, I'm 45. And so I'm not in my 20s anymore. So I will have them do that timeline and take a look at not only what they did, but what was driving, what was the impetus, what was the intention behind the movement. So when you're little, it might be to play. Then I have them also note when any big life events happen. So like it could be a move, it could be a school change, it could be their parents' divorce, it could be a death in the family, whatever. Then also I'll have them, if they're willing, put trauma, and I'll just have them note with a T if they want. Now, I'm not a therapist. So when I do this with someone, I am working with a therapist. So I'm not working on their trauma. We are just noting it. Also, in addition, I want to note right now that as a dietitian, I will share this with the therapist. So this is a really important document. And it's because usually the therapist might be doing something like a trauma timeline, even if they're not doing it formally, they're kind of getting it verbally. So this is really handy to see where their relationship with body movement kind of, correlates with that and different life events. So I'll have them put in where they started. If I'm dealing with an athlete, if I'm working with an athlete, then we're putting where that started. Often with an athlete, especially if they started as a kid, it'll be like fun, camaraderie, loved hanging out with my friends. At some point, especially if they're in my room, unfortunately, because they're not coming to me because it's all sunshine. They're coming to me because they're working on things. And so what'll happen is that will often turn. They'll put where the eating disorders started to come in. I work with mostly eating disorders. So, when it became about body manipulation, I say body manipulation, either weight or physique, etc. Okay. And when it became unfun, when it became play versus exercise, we'll often say in the room. When it became unfun, because there's usually a point where it does. Now, as an athlete, any athlete will tell you not every practice is fun. And you still got to go because you're an athlete, because you can't stop your training just because you don't feel like it. And that's the thing about athletes, it's hard, as opposed to someone who's, not exercising or not training for a specific sport. If they're just kind of moving their body, that's a person who gets to say, hey, I'm going to take a day off. An athlete doesn't get to say that. And I think that's really important to note. So there's times where I would be sick, and every athlete has this story. You're sick, you're still there. So it's important when we're working with athletes to know that that's what they've had to press themselves through, is pain, sadness. There might be some mental distress, it might be like pain and injury. Often you're asked to continue on injury, or get better really fast from an injury, that sort of thing. So we do this movement timeline, and they can see, their different phases of their relationship with physical activity, and they can see what they used to like and why they liked it, what made them not like certain phases of their body movement timeline. And we sit there and we take a look, okay, well, what physical activities, what body movements did you like? And I want them to list things on their body movement timeline, such as walking with friends, walking my dog, gardening, picking flowers, sitting in a field and picking flowers and rolling around. Like any body movement, it's all good. Jump rope, as a kid, even if they're like, well, I'm never going to do that again. I don't care. Put it down. And what did you love about it? And then you might get someone who really loves to hang out with people. Like they love the community aspect. You might get another person who really loves the alone time. They just love being in nature. They love being in certain types of nature, maybe forests, maybe parks, maybe the ocean, depending on where they live. So you'll get to find what drives them to enjoy, what is behind them enjoying body movement. And now we have taken it away from the body manipulation and weight maintenance and all that crap. This works with, this is just the beginning, but this kind of gets people moving it away from, weight manipulation, and taps them into what they love about moving their body. So that's where I start usually with people, and we see where that goes.
I have one question just about the athletes, and I think, because I think about being embodied and being connected to our body, and having this on one message, oh, I can feel, I'm really attuned to my body even when it hurts. But then this thing that also comes in with okay, now push through it because we don't want you to hurt, because in order to excel at this, you need to move past these things, and which seems very contradictory to a lot of the, body trust stuff or body liberation stuff that we might try to work on later.
Right. Yeah. That's why I mention it, because it is very counterintuitive. So a lot of times when I work with athletes, they're Well, I work with athletes who usually the athlete I get is usually completely out of their sport unless they're in high school. I'll get a lot of ex-collegiate athletes. Now, if I have a high school athlete, I will encourage a high school athlete, like if you're injured, rest because you will pay for it later. And it will be later. Like it'll be in your 20s, it'll be 30s, 40s, somewhere. And it's tough to tell a 15-year-old that. So I also tell the parents that, it's just not worth it. And I'll also say, look, you take this, like you take this time off and you will come back stronger. Because I can see the long version of this. I mean, you look at just look at say, for example, football athletes. We can have a whole commentary on that lasting 10 hours, but, just like the way they sort of push them back out after pretty devastating injuries. Yeah. And they're pushing through and then they get injured and then re-injured and then re-injured. I mean, here's the deal. I'll usually tell people, and I don't work with pro athletes. I just want to put that out there. Some people do work with pro athletes, and this is something they're going to have to it's a very niche, group of people. But I'm interrupting myself to say this. I notice a lot of people who aren't pro athletes who are putting bread on the table, right? With their body movement, right? With their sport. And I'll notice them taking the same sort of tack. Like I have to sit there and stop and say, so what are we trying to do here? So you're exercising through this injury. Are you feeding your family with this? Are you putting a roof over your head with this? What is driving you? Because it's not like, so with a high school, going back to this specific high school athlete, I will say look, how long do you want to be doing this? Do you want to do this for a year or do you want to do this for a long time? Because if you want to do it for a long time, you will allow yourself to actually heal.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the people who are not pro athletes.
Right.
Are treating exercise as though they are becoming pro athletes. With a client like that, what I'm seeing is like, okay, I can't take a break. I have to do it this many days in a row. And I can't take a break. And what I'm seeing is, okay, this is some dependence. And if you have to take a break, there's a high level of anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, I can't take it. It's like, you're not an athlete. You're a person going to the gym. You can take a break, right? And that's when, of course, I know it is tied up with fears about body size, body shape, that kind of thing. And then also using exercise as a way to manage anxiety, which I think exercise is great for, enhancing mood. But if you can't let it go for a day because your anxiety is so high, I see that as a concern.
Yes. Yeah, that's a major concern.
So I guess my question around that is do you ever recommend abstinence from exercise for a while?
Especially if the person, okay, so yes, absolutely with injury.
In the non-athlete. Yeah.
Yeah. If I see a compulsion, like if I see dependence, so what we'll do is we can then now play around with several different things. Now realize I'm an outpatient, okay? And it's really, really key to understand. So I have, everything I say is a suggestion. It's not like I have them in residential. It's like you're on abstinence, boom, they're on abstinence, okay? Or they're exercising in the bathroom, and you got to check on that. But so the important thing is this needs to be a collaborative effort, discussion with the person I'm working with. So things we'll play with several factors, kind of what we're doing, like which physical activity we're doing. So if this person is always like, I got to do, spin or CrossFit or what have you, okay, or I always got to run, or it's always got to be at the gym, or it doesn't count. Okay, these are all red flaggy things. Okay, if they have a rigidity in the terms of like the what type, also if it has to be a certain intensity, it has to be a certain frequency, and it has to be a certain duration. Okay, so like for example, the person you were describing, I can't skip a day. Like that's frequency. It has to be 7 days a week. I'll give some education around like even a professional athlete needs their rest days. Okay. So we will practice resting one day. Other things we can address are, with the exercise dependent person, is addressing what types of exercise. If they always have to do high intensity, let's play with the intensity. Let's do a low intensity. Lauren, I'll be anxious. Yes, you will. You will be anxious. How can we sit with that? Also, working with their therapist and me to figure out other ways to manage their anxiety, because if the only way to manage your anxiety is like one thing, now we got a problem. Okay. So if it's always exercise, or if it's like always food, or if it's always whatever, now we got a problem. We need to have a potpourri of ways to manage our anxiety, because at any moment, well, one, you could actually become dependent on these things, and you want to have many different things, because one, injury, two, this sort of rigidity. I've seen it I've seen people lose jobs over their exercise dependence because they need to go and spend 2 hours at the gym, and then therefore they're late for work, and they get fired eventually. I've seen it happen. Or they have like zero relationship with their family and it ends up in divorce, or at least a disharmony in the home. Or they end up socially isolating. So we want to have that potpourri of things that we're doing for the anxiety. So playing around with those factors, like I said, how many days are we doing it? Titrating those days. What type of exercise? Playing with the intensity, doing a low intensity. Are we always listening to music? Maybe we don't one day. Like even down to that sort of thing. Exercising in different environments. Does it always have to be a gym? How about we go to the beach? Let's go for a hike. Let's go for an easy hike. Let's just walk around the block. Let's walk your dog. That counts. And then counting that, because that's the other thing with someone who's exercise dependent and is using these different factors to be like, okay, it has to be this level and this and that and the other. Playing around with, okay, I went on an X amount of minutes walk with my dog and it was slow, and that counts, and that is movement, and that is purposeful exercise.
And I find that helpful with people who are exercise avoidant as well.
Yes.
Right? So I'll talk to my clients and they'll be like, I really want it. They come from more like diet culture, and they've really stopped exercising because they said, I had to reevaluate my relationship with exercise, but now I don't want to do anything, but I also do want to do something. And so we sort of review what they're doing, and I find like, well, you're actually moving a lot in your daily life. Like you're walking to and from, subways or buses. You are walking your dog. You're going for a swim. I'm like, why aren't you counting that? And they're like, well, that's not enough. That's
right.
That's not somehow the kind of exercise I used to do that would exhaust me and also for my weight. But it's so interesting because I'm like, we have to count all of the stuff that you do as movement. It counts, right?
Yeah, it counts. It matters. You are enough. And isn't that what the base is, right? You are enough.
Yes, what you're doing enough. May be enough right now.
Yeah, you are enough. Like what you are enough, what you're doing is enough. I mean, because it comes down to like what's underneath all this, and it's this kind of feeling of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I have to change to be, enough, and that's the base. That's the kind of base of all these things that they're, that we are doing. I'll include myself.
I think that's the entire problem with humanity is none of us feel like we're enough.
Yes.
I'm just going to put it down to that. We all feel like we're not enough, but we are. We're enough. So start there.
Start there, and honoring your body and listening to it. If for the average person who's just moving their body to feel good, finding out what feels good. How often is it feasible to do that? Like having it be a respectful thing. And, I'm in the middle of doing Erin is a certified body trust provider. I'm in the middle of that certification. Learning to trust your body and its signals. And that's hard if it's someone who has a background of trauma or who used to be like any sort of athlete, when you were told to, it doesn't matter how your body feels today. You will be training, and being able to release that. Like this doesn't serve me anymore. I need to release this.
Yeah, I think it's one of those areas that why I'm so thankful you're coming on today is that we don't sort of talk about enough how we can develop a healthier relationship with moving our body. We talk a lot about food and we talk a lot about this other sort of part of this acceptance process. But I think, finding this piece around moving our body is really important and really quite challenging. I find the fitness industry very problematic and not very accepting of different body types. So, it's a space where a lot of conversations are needed and a lot of space for our clients to explore what feels safe for them also.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I encourage, one of my dreams is to open, like, I have no clue how to do it.
Put it out there. It's all right. Put it out there.
Oh, Aaron. You know what I'm going to say. Just put opening up a space that is body inclusive, that has nothing to do with weight. Because let me tell you, when I was working in a gym, that was not the case. When I was there, I was very caught up in it too. And, I'm glad I was able to kind of see the error of my ways and move past that, perpetrating on myself and then enabling other people to perpetrate on themselves as well. This sort of weight normative paradigm that we frequently fall victim to. So it would be so wonderful to suddenly have the funds to open a space and have, there's so many things. That's part of why I wanted to get certified in yoga. There's so many things that we need as a culture to include the diversity of bodies that exists.
Yeah, and I want a place that specifically caters to people with lots of injuries because,
yes,
like you, I've had foot surgery. I'm tend to be kind of injury prone. I have to be very careful with my body when exercising, and there's nothing that I can tell right now that really, at least in my area, in our area, there's really nothing for that. And I'm even thinking of yoga classes that I've been to where I always injure myself in yoga classes. So there's obviously something that's missing for me where I'm not taking the time to respect my body and to listen to it. I'm getting a little competitive somehow.
Yep.
I would love for, a place to cater to injured people or injury prone people.
Yes.
And I got to say, there has to be a ton of us out there. So, but just something that's a little gentler too, because I'm just going to say it, middle-aged bodies don't move like 20-year-old bodies.
No.
Right?
No, they don't.
They don't. And you have to learn how to sort of do that. And I go to this exercise class where it's it doesn't respect the limitations of my body at all. So I have to be the one that's putting the limits on it. It'd just be nice to be in a space that respected bodies in that way a bit more.
Yeah, and gave kind of verbiage to, in say you're in a group class, I would love those. I know which group class you're talking about. It would be so great if they can add some verbiage, just simply add, and if this doesn't work for you, feel free to do X, Y, Z, make this adjustment, sit out, around or whatever.
Do whatever you want, but
yeah,
it's not
do whatever you
all.
want. No, no. Instead, it's rigid, and and there is a look downing upon.
That's a new word.
Look downing upon. I'm making up new words, guys. Speaking of verbiage, I mean,
a shaming of sorts.
Yes, it's shaming of sorts, and I have sought out yoga classes and teachers who do exactly that. They sit there and they invite, you need to go into child's pose or whatever. You need to go into Shavasana, do it. You can be in Shavasana the entire class. It's your time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I find yoga is much more, forgiving that way. And the only problem is I hate yoga.
Yeah, I mean, but that's it's so different strokes for different folks. And so I wish every class could be like that instead of this kind of blame and shame and, clearly you need to whip yourself into shape. What?
Nothing changes unless something changes.
Oh my God, stop.
Shut up.
That's the no pain, no gain. That no pain, no gain is back in the 80s. And now it's nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
And it just annoys me. And I just want to, middle of the class, just be middle fingers out, man. But, you can't be that bad attitude chick. So I'm not going to do it.
And there's going to be people who, like you, rebel. And then there's going to be people like me who yes, coach. Yes, coach. So I want to acknowledge that there's both of those people, yay to the rebels, because actually it's probably protective for you.
Yeah. I'm like the bad kid in the back of gym class, just like, I'm not doing this. Screw
Yeah.
you, man. It's just like, give me my cigarettes. I don't smoke. But, I feel like that fits the scene. And, it's neat. For me, that's needed to get through that class because there are benefits for it. That's why I'm going. There are benefits for me. But I have to do it my way.
Yeah. I mean, and someone, and kind of know yourself, I would say to people listening, know yourself. If you're the person that's like, yes, coach, I'll do whatever you say, coach. Be, aware of that and start to drop in and listen to your body. Listen to the little pain, listen to the fatigue, listen to the whatever. And even back in the day when I was training people, I would be like, this, like, if you're feeling this, and this, that's not cool. If you're too tired, that's not cool. So, because I did have a lot of people who had past injury only because I had injuries. And so the managers would always give me injured people who had past injuries. So I did get experience with that, which is invaluable, which actually led me to, kind of do what I was doing, in terms of like right now.
Just to sort of make a little segue here, when you're working with folks and they are moving their body, on a fairly consistent basis. And there's this, mentality that we shouldn't be fueling our body if we're going to be moving our body. How do you talk to them about like appropriately fueling their body to meet their needs?
It depends on the person. If they're an athlete, we will talk about like timing and types of foods that kind of settle well. Like, so for example, when I was, even when I was like doing marathons, like for example, like a runner, like there's a specific breakfast I would eat. I would eat it 2 hours before. Why? If I didn't, there would be consequences. So, like speaking of intuitive eating, that was like the most mindful thing I can do. That's the most intuitive thing I can do. In the book, Intuitive Eating, actually, they give like this wonderful example of like, if you're going to go to a show, like a theater show, and there's no food allowed in there, and the show's at 8, and you're going to dinner at 6, but you're not hungry at 6. But if you don't eat at 6, forever hold your peace, then guess what? It might be the intuitive thing to eat at that dinner time because you won't be able to eat till like 10 or 11 at night after the theater show. So too, we can extrapolate that to like athletics. If you're going to be like, say, in a soccer tournament, we need to time your eating such that you are fueled. So it might be, like for example, if you're running a marathon, you're going to be fueling during the marathon. So whatever it is, figure it out. What works for you? What worked for me happened to be like this certain gel. I couldn't chew and run at the same time. I would walk through my water stops. That's like what I chose to do. I wasn't like looking to, win the car at the end.
Was it the goo packets?
Yeah, but not goo. I had to do a specific brand.
Okay.
Yeah, because certain brands won't sit well in your tummy. You got to learn that in training. So with an athlete, we're working on like, okay, if they have to use those like kind of fake foods, I ended up having to. But some people can like just eat pretzels and stuff like that. Like little Snickers, gummy bears, things like that. There's all sorts of things, and there's all sorts of things like marketed like specifically for like sports, nutrition during exercise. And then you can also use regular plain food as well. The timing of eating even after the event to kind of restore and refuel is definitely important. So when I'm working with an athlete, we're going to be talking sports nutrition. That's actually kind of cool, especially for someone with an eating disorder. That really helps them actually in their recovery because then they feel more like the athlete that they are. Then food isn't like an eating disorder thing. It's like, oh, I'm fueling. Okay, so great. That helps them in terms of that. Now, when I'm dealing with someone or working with someone who is, just a kind of regular gym goer, just a regular person who's, not necessarily training for a specific event, but they're just like an active person. Usually it's just, it's making sure that you're just kind of eating surrounding this. This is more intuitive. It's more like free flowing. It's less like, okay, 2 hours before it's going to come up, this sort of like, oh, have a light breakfast of whatever sits well. If you're going to be exercising in the morning, have the rest of breakfast after. We might be doing that. Someone might be able to sit well with a full breakfast before, depending on what they're doing. It really depends on what they're doing, and have a snack after. Some people like to exercise at night, and I'm like, look, have the next indicated meal or snack after, or exercise during the day. Have the next indicated meal or snack before and after, and we will, it's very individual, as you can tell, and we'll kind of work it that way. But we can be more intuitive with someone who's not necessarily like training for an event or in a certain sport, if they're just a gym goer.
Yeah, that makes a lot, it makes sense, but it also sounds incredibly challenging to change that mindset of like being intuitive with food and exercise, because they're both, go hand in hand. And again, like, wow, I don't move my body that well if it's not given the right kind of fuel for me to do this, right? I think that's an important thing for people to develop the skill with.
Yeah, and they'll feel the difference too the minute they start doing it. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many, like, especially high school athletes who have come out of like restriction, they will be like, I can't believe how much better my performance was in XYZ sport. Wow, I like kicked ass. That's a great moment when they're like, when I'm fueled, I kick ass. Yes, you do. So you don't kick ass when you are, when you're just sort of depleted and running on fumes. Yeah, so there's that. Also, the thing I wanted to point out too is also talking with people about enjoyment of food instead of just fuel. I really can't stress that enough. Like creating, so like having like fun things around food, whether that's just simply going out for a meal with friends, or even better, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, learning how to cook, turning on music, and making a meal with your family, with your friends, with yourself, and really enjoying that in that process, creating joy with food too, creating an outlet with that, and because food can be joyful, it's not just like fuel.
Yeah, it needs to be joyful.
Yeah,
definitely.
It can be fun. It can be fun. It's true. Not just fuel. So depends on when and what and where.
Well, this has been so great because I feel like we covered like a really good range of topics under the topic of exercise.
Good. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope this is helpful.
Yeah. So just want to thank you for coming on. Lauren, where can people find you?
Well, one great way to find me is my website. So that's laurenantonrd.com. And RD as in registered dietitian. And they can find me on Instagram at Lauren Anton RD. And same on Facebook at Lauren Anton RD. I have a professional page there. And I'm also barely on Twitter, but I am on there. LGA Nutrition at LGA Nutrition.
Awesome. We are so grateful that you came and talked to us, our friend and our colleague.
Grateful to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Well, you're welcome.
There's a cough. Thank you.
There's a cough. We've all been coughing the entire time, but it's been fun. I'm glad we got to cover this topic. I think it's really important.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.